Welcome, fifth grade teachers. My name is Mr. Giordano, and I'm the virtual content specialist for fifth grade Passport to Social Studies. This is a teacher-facing video. Today we're going to focus on Unit 2, our Day 2 lesson. And specifically within this lesson, which is titled Welcome to Europe, the Age of Exploration, we're going to focus on supporting teachers in using and creating breakout rooms for the 3Gs group work activity that is in this lesson for students. So before we jump into this activity, I thought it'd be great to go over breakout rooms and what they are, why we should use them, and how they can be used in a variety of instructional ways. So breakout rooms are a great way to create a small group atmosphere through virtual learning. Students often feel more comfortable speaking in front of a smaller group of students in the remote setting. It also gives them more time to speak because there's less students in a room. So many of them feel more comfortable turning on their cameras, showing their faces, and actually participating in a verbal way. And breakout rooms can be a great opportunity for reading groups, jigsaw grouping, grouping students based on their skill or their needs, and even for presentations and peer feedback. So today, we are going to focus on breakout rooms, specifically using Google Meet. So you can see this little icon on the bottom, which is the Google Meet icon. Many of our schools are already using Google Meet. It's important to note that there's two different types of Google for Education that might look a little bit different. There's the Google for Education platform that is free and that doesn't have breakout rooms embedded within it. There's also the Google for Enterprise Education or Google for Enterprise, which has breakout rooms already embedded in their meets. So depending on which version your school have, it might look a little bit different. I'm going to go over this as if we're all using the version that doesn't have breakout rooms already embedded in the Google Meets, where you can just simply press a tab and send the students into breakout rooms like you would do in Zoom. I'm going to pretend as if we don't have that version and we would have to set it up a different way. I'd also like to point out that there will be two videos for this overview. The first video, which is what we're looking at right now, will focus on the general concepts and foundations of breakout rooms that can be applied to many of the grade 5 Passport to Social Studies lessons. This is really an overview of that remote learning instructional practice. The second video for this series is going to focus more specifically on using breakout rooms for the Unit 2 Day 2 student activity related to the 3Gs. That second video will be accompanied by a Google Slides template for the activity, along with specific steps for implementation. Okay, so before we jump into the activity, let's just talk about planning for breakout rooms, where you should begin, and what types of digital resources you should consider creating to make this practice work as best as it could. So first off, we want to consider the task at hand. What is the student learning objective, and will the students be working on the same task at the same time during breakout rooms, or be assigned different pieces of a larger task to work on, then share out to one another? So this is important to kind of consider how you want the task to be laid out and how you want the actual activity to run. The next piece would be the resource and the materials that you're creating for students. So will students each receive their own individual copies of the task or the Google Doc, or are they collaboratively typing on the same resource, such as slides, Google Slides, or a Jamboard or a Google Doc? If it is that type of collaborative activity, are there enough templates for each breakout room group? Are the shared settings on student can edit? That way all the students can edit the resource at the same time. And do the students know where to find the resource? If it's something that each student should hand in individually, was the assignment set to make a copy for each student when it was assigned? And is there a due date? That way they know when they need to submit it by. So these are just some things to think about as you're creating your resources, as you're creating your materials for breakout rooms. Next, you want to consider how you would consider counting participation in breakout rooms. So you might want to have students turn in an activity on Google Classroom, and that might be how their participation would be counted. You could also count it in different ways. You can consider having an attendance list that a paraprofessional who would be supervising the breakout room could submit to you or email to you after the breakout room. That way you have a sense of who spoke, who attended, and how the actual breakout room went. And then last but not least, you want to consider student roles for the breakout room. You can consider if you're going to have a student facilitator and what other types of roles you can use to increase that student participation and ensure that groups stay on task. So here are some sample roles for breakout rooms that I've used before in my own teaching. And you can consider using these in your breakout rooms. You can change the wording, you can change the description, but these are some of the examples: a student facilitator or a discussion leader, a screen share or a typer, a time manager, a reporter, a chat monitor, and a participator, which the participator is everyone, right? Everyone is participating, they're paying attention, they're copying down what needs to be copied and turning in whichever assignment is being completed in the group work. So really everyone's a participator. But these other roles you can consider giving out to specific students, or even having the paraprofessional who's supervising the room work with the student to determine who will take on which role. Okay, so how should I prepare my students for breakout rooms? First off, you want to ensure that the expectations and the guidelines are clear to students. That way they know what's expected of them and they're accountable for what needs to be accomplished. You want to create and share some ground rules with your students for using breakout rooms. Of course, talking about respect, talking about encouraging students to turn on their cameras and really show us who they are, because in these smaller groups they have that ability to do so in a less hostile or a less scary way that it may seem to them in the larger meets. You want to take it slow and expect some technical difficulties in the beginning, right? And then as you go, you'll be able to make your fixes and you'll be able to level up on your breakout room game. You want to ensure that the task is clear and is accessible to everyone. Plan ahead and anticipate the roadblocks that students may face. You would like to prepare how you will roll out the task and have students show their participation. You also want to consider how the students will get into the breakout rooms. So who will be opening up the breakout rooms if we're using nicknames? What will the nicknames be? And you might even want to, just for your first time, have the students practice leaving the full group meet and going into a smaller breakout room Google Meet and then returning back into the full group meet. Just practicing that will end up saving you a lot of time in the long run. So that might be the first thing you would want to do when setting up and preparing for breakout rooms. You also would want to consider creating a resource that lists the groups and the meet nicknames for the students to view. So a visual aid for them to actually understand visually what this will look like and which room they'll be in. So I'll show you on the next slide an example of that. And then you as the teacher, you should try to visit each room. So if a paraprofessional is supervising each room, or another adult, such as a co-teacher or even a student teacher, you would want to try to pop into each room and provide feedback to the students. And you want to encourage students to turn their cameras on. That way you can get to see them and get to know them. Of course, this is something that you're encouraging just because it makes the breakout rooms more lively, more exciting, and more personable. And then to build a routine around this practice, and don't give up after one try. Keep at it, and you'll make your revisions as needed, but don't give up after one try if it doesn't go smoothly. The more you practice, the better you'll get with this. Okay, so here's an example of that visual aid. This is something that I use in my classroom. So usually at the top, I'll put my meet nickname for the main class Google Meet, and then I'll put what time I would like for them to return back to it from their breakout rooms for our share out. Then I usually put my roles here as a reminder that these roles should be distributed in the breakout rooms for each student to take on and to be assigned. And then the meet nicknames. So the meet nicknames for each room, it could be based on the assignment, it could be based on the name of the topic. So you can consider what you would want the meet nickname to be for the various breakout rooms. You can even just have it be group 1, group 2, group 3, and then the paraprofessional's name who would be manning the room or another adult, and then the task, right? What are they expected to do? It might say something like, you will be reading excerpt 1 in our Google Doc and will complete the attached chart. But just a quick sentence of a reminder of what that specific breakout room will be doing. And then in the white box down here, I just put down the directions for how a student would get into a Google Meet or get into the breakout room, which would be going to the main Google Meet site, pressing enter a code or nickname, and then they would enter the nickname that's associated with their breakout room up here, and then they would press join, right? And then when it was time to go back into the full group meet at whatever the designated time is up here, they would just do the same thing, but type in the meet nickname for the main Google Meet. And again, I'm speaking as if we're all using the Google for Education platform that doesn't have the breakout rooms already embedded in the Google Meets. If you do have that feature, it makes this piece a lot easier. If you don't, you might want to use something like this. And let me just show you really quick. If you click that link, this is what you would see. You would enter the nickname, whatever it might be. I'll just put social studies. You would click join, and then it's going to take you to that page. Okay. So how should I prepare my paraprofessionals for breakout rooms? So you would definitely want to assign a paraprofessional or another adult to supervise each breakout room. When planning, consider putting the paraprofessional's assigned student into their breakout room, the one that they'll be leading, so they can monitor their students' progress and report back to you, the teacher, or even to a parent if needed. You want to review with your paraprofessionals how to open up Google Meets using the nickname. So the exact same directions I just explained for students, you would explain and you can model it for the paraprofessionals. And then have paraprofessionals take attendance in the breakout rooms and email the list to you at the conclusion of the meet. And of course, you want to give your paraprofessionals prior notice about the breakout room activity so they can prepare themselves for it. They would need some time to review the task and prepare themselves with the materials. You would want to share your resources and your task with the paraprofessionals. And of course, right, this would be wonderful if we have paraprofessionals in our classrooms to be able to use them in this way to really help supervise and lead these breakout rooms. If you don't, you could, of course, yourself as the teacher, pop into each one. But the best practice would be to assign an adult to help supervise each room while you, the teacher, are popping into each breakout room to give each group feedback. Okay, teachers, this teacher-facing video will be continued in a second part that will further break down the activity and introduce a new tech tool that you're going to love called Flippity. I will see you all very soon.